Hey guys, welcome back to Cruise Blog. It's Allie, and today I'm going to be sharing about my unfortunate experience of forgetting to check in for my cruise, and I'll be detailing exactly why I will not make this mistake again. Let's get into it. Before you board your cruise ship and officially start your vacation, you must check in for your cruise first. Just like boarding an airplane, cruise lines require guests to check in for their vacation. During this process, the cruise lines confirm your official documentation and emergency contacts, and they often require you to fill out a health questionnaire. The process is easy and seamless, and unlike flying on an airplane, you can check in for your cruise far in advance. For example, Royal Caribbean allows guests to check in for their cruise online or in their app up to 45 days in advance. So there's really no excuse for not checking in for your cruise. You have plenty of time to get the process complete, and it only takes a few minutes at most. Yet I found out firsthand exactly what happens when you forget to check in for your cruise. During my weekend cruise on board Royal Caribbean's Grandeur of the Seas, I totally spaced on checking in for my cruise. I'll admit that I have never done this before in my 2 decades of cruising, so it was certainly a learning lesson. Here's what happens when you forget to check in for your cruise and why I absolutely will not be making this mistake again. So the morning of my cruise on board Grandeur of the Seas, I realized that I had yet to complete checking in for my weekend sailing on board the ship. My sister and I decided to book this 4-night sailing on Grandeur of the Seas just a couple months before the sail date. In the weeks leading up to the cruise, I was very swamped at work and mentally preoccupied. This is not the fault of Royal Caribbean. I had received a few periodic emails reminding me to check in, but the stress of life and work had caused me to dismiss these reminders. I told myself that once the cruise was closer, I would get around to checking in. And at one point, I remembered starting the check-in process, and I thought that I had completed everything except the health questionnaire. However, when I went to download our set sail passes from the Royal Caribbean app the morning of our cruise, I noticed that I had not, in fact, completed the online check-in. It only showed that my sister had completed check-in, and this was something that I had never done before, so I was not even sure what it would mean when I arrived to the terminal to board our ship. The Royal Caribbean app made it clear that I could no longer check in, so I ended up going on my computer to see if I could check in that way. To my surprise, the online portal showed that I could still check in for my cruise. I went through the process on my laptop and I downloaded a set sail pass to my phone along with my sister's, and I thought at this point that I was in the clear, but this was false hope. When we arrived at the cruise terminal in Tampa, my set sail pass kept returning an error. After I was able to download my set sail pass like normal, I figured that I was good to go. However, when the port agents tried to scan my pass, popped up with a big red error. They tried a few different times at the boarding area, but the set sail pass unfortunately continued returning an error. My sister said, "I can't believe that you forgot to check in. You've never done that before," as we were shuffled to the counter for additional assistance. I told the port employee that I had checked in for the cruise just that morning because I had forgotten to do it prior. She scanned my passport and she asked for confirmation of my information. I also provided her my emergency contact, and I gave her the credit card that I wanted to use on file for the cruise. She gave me a printed boarding pass to board the ship, and she also told me to take a picture of a barcode on her iPad. The set sail pass that I had tried to use earlier would continue to giving me an error, she said. I was bummed that I had wasted our time at the boarding terminal because I'd forgotten to check in promptly. Had my sister also forgotten, we would have been even more delayed getting onto the ship. However, I'm sure that there are always passengers who forget to check in for their cruise prior to arriving. I would also assume that maybe older passengers who perhaps aren't technologically savvy enough to check in beforehand rely on an in-person check-in process at the terminal. But sadly, my mistake continued to be a hassle on our short cruise. Once we were on board the ship, I figured at this point I was in the clear. I had a physical C-Pass card now for our cruise, so what more could go wrong? Well, on the 3rd day, I received a notice in our stateroom that my cruise account did not have any payment tied to it. The note said, "Set up your account. We noticed that you don't have a debit or credit card on file with us. You can set one up at guest services to avoid onboard purchase interruptions and keep track of your charges on the Royal Caribbean app." This notice confused me as I knew the port agent had taken my credit card and she said that she had added it to my account. In addition, I saw a pending charge on my credit card statement, so I was very confused. I've always checked in before arriving to the terminal and I've set up my payment account on file, so I really was unsure if there was more that I needed to do because I had forgotten to check in. So I made a visit to guest services to see what the deal was with my credit card on file, or lack thereof. During our port day in Cozumel, I wanted to ensure that everything was set up appropriately with my account. Because most guests were ashore, I thought that this would be the best time to talk with guest services. Also, the next day would be the last day of our cruise, and if you end up waiting until the last day of your cruise to deal with guest services, you can often find very long lines. At this point, I was very annoyed with myself. I absolutely realized that I have no one to blame but myself for this. Luckily, my sister and I didn't have any plans in Cozumel, so it was a good time to see what was going on with my account. There were a few people in line with me, but it moved quickly. I eventually was able to speak to someone at guest services and ask why I received this notice. The crew member said that they did see the credit card on my account, and he also was confused why I received the letter in my stateroom. Guest services said because I had not checked in online for my cruise, there was probably a delay in the system updating that I did in fact have a credit card on file, but they were seeing at the time of boarding that I did not have one on file. He assumed anyone who had forgotten to check in beforehand received this notification in their stateroom as a reminder to set up a payment on the account. Forgetting to check in for my cruise was a dumb mistake that I will not be making again. Although I've cruised nearly 40 times now, I had never made this mistake before, and it's certainly not one that I will make again. Let me emphasize that I realize, again, this is entirely my own fault, but I am sure that I'm not the first nor the last person to forget checking in for their cruise. Everyone makes mistakes, but vacation is meant to be fun and carefree. It's best to check in on the app or online before it's too late. Forgetting to check in for this cruise on Grandeur of the Seas created a few minor inconveniences throughout the cruise, spending extra time at the terminal and guest services, dealing with the repercussions of my actions during vacation was slightly annoying. In fact, I realized once I started sharing this story that I have yet to check in for my cruise that I have next week. And you can bet your bottom dollar that I promptly finished the check-in process before I even finished this video. All right, everybody, that's all we have for today. Be sure to comment below if you've ever forgotten to check in for your cruise and what your experience was like. Also, please like and subscribe to Cruise Blog so you can be notified every time we have a new video. And until next time, happy cruising.